I would like to be introduced by your first impression of me.
Interesting. Okay. I guess my first impression of your personality, that you are a very open person, like open on the like big five, the ocean scale. Yeah, I think you have a lot of openness, it seems like. But I think that you're very friendly and you're able to like connect with people. So I'm getting very good vibes from you.
Yeah, no, you as well, man. It's mutual.
Tell me what's a life? I've been feeling starstruck, seeing human love thrive in this really long dusk. Guess it's really all love, 7 billion of us, and I read the headlines. Tell me what's a life? It's potlucks of violence, corn shucked to conscience, hot sauce, blood diamonds. Everybody pitching in force red with silence. We already hit up that cold bread.
Hi, I'm Michael.
And I'm Obasi. So, my friend Michael and I have come into adulthood watching our world become more and more polarized. From political polarization to income inequality to how we even define what is real. It feels like schism and conflict are everywhere. Like everything is coming apart. It feels like we need some type of meta solution. Regardless of the issue, like how do we come back together? What does it look like to make peace?
And at the same time, the world hasn't literally fallen apart yet, so people must be making peace on some level. So that's where we want to start. We want to learn who's making peace and how we can apply that to the rest of our world.
So join us as we try to find everyday peacemakers and learn what peacemaking means to them.
Each episode, we'll learn one principle of peacemaking from our guest. These are featured as a growing tribute to our guests and their wisdom at principlesofpeacemaking.org. Today, we hear from Adam, who tells us a few stories about communication and miscommunication, understanding and misunderstanding. In each story, we grapple with what is said, done, and meant, and the three of us often come to different conclusions. This episode's principle of peacemaking is to pay attention to our values, our actions, and each other.
I guess my first story that I thought of is I've been watching a lot of documentaries about what people call learning disorders, which I would call learning difference. And I watched one on ADHD called The Disruptors, which I recommended to Michael, and I recommend it to you too, Obasi, and to anyone really, because like when we look at ADHD like a disorder and a deficit, it is crushing to people, you know? And it was certainly crushing to me as a child, and it taught me to say, well, I was taught that I should sit in the hallway and be away from everybody, that I should go and be alone by myself because I'm a nuisance, I'm a disruptance. I remember like on my third grade classroom whiteboard was a tally of how many times I was allowed to ask the question why, because it annoyed my teacher. And my teacher was a great woman, let me just say that, like great person, wonderful soul. But it annoyed her so much because she did not understand me. And also I did not understand myself because I didn't have the tools. I was 8 years old, you know? So I think a lot of my peacemaking is with myself, like the way that I talk to myself. I will write things on my mirror. What I have written right now on my mirror is listen to you more than to them. Like, you know, do what your values are. Do what your principles are. I've written like you are enough. Like that stuff I have to write to myself, you know? And before I don't think I'd even recognize that, and I certainly wouldn't say that on a live talk or something like that. So it's the peacemaking of saying, I allow you enough grace to have ADHD and to be hyperactive. Because, again, I'm quoting someone else. I'm quoting a doctor called Ned Hallowell, but he says, what is creativity except impulsivity gone right? And that's, I think, why I do creative things. And like Obasi, before we started this, you were saying, I think you're very open-minded or very open to experiences. Yes, because I have ADHD. You know, like I've had to compensate in different ways for that lack of attention towards things because I'm like, hey, what's that? What's that? That's what curiosity is, you know? So all that stuff that I used to think of as such a terrible thing about myself, I've had to like make peace with the fact that a lot of those things are the reason that I'm like able to do some stuff that I'm proud of today. I write like letters to my previous self, like, you know what, it's okay, previous self. You're worthy of love, of love of yourself, especially. And that definitely helps with anger at, you know, wanting things to change faster or wanting things to be more fair, or wanting things to be reversed and redone, which will never happen. And accepting those things, I think, is mutual with anger. And it's necessary to have anger to find that acceptance. And I'm still an angry person, but at the same time, I direct that anger towards a purpose. And I think that creates my priorities, which creates my values. So yeah, that's my peacemaking. It's with myself.
So I was noting, and I think I see this all the time in my work and in my friends, the just social exclusion that happens for any kind of neurodivergence, and the amount of pain and isolation and shame that that creates. And a lot of the people that I encounter who have had that experience wouldn't be able to say that to themselves, wouldn't accept saying that to themselves, wouldn't have any reason to believe that saying that would help or was true or anything like that. So I'm wondering what allowed you to get to a point where you could say that to yourself.
I suppose when I say it to myself, I don't believe it every day. I don't even believe it most days. But I guess I throw it out there just as another alternative. Like in counseling, we often ask, like, would you say that to yourself, right? Which that question has annoyed, the daylights out of me in my 13 years of therapy. But at the same time, it is a question worth asking. But again, there's something different between feeling in your head and feeling in your heart. You know what I mean? There's a person saying what comes from the heart sits on the heart. So I think that, like, putting your heart into something to say, like, I really do love you to the point of almost tears is the reason that maybe I'm allowed to believe myself a tiny bit. It's the emotionality of it. But it has nothing to do with logic or reason. And you can never logicize, yeah, I'm worthy, because A leads to B leads to C, at least not in my mind. I don't see it a lot in my makeup, but I think the emotionality lets me crack through things. The other thing that helps me crack through things is purpose, like feeling like I'm doing something that's worthwhile. So yeah, I think a lot of times we're taught in an education system where to get the A is the ultimate goal. You get it, and then it's gone, and then your goodness and your intellect is gone too. And I feel like at some points I have a tendency to, like, want to do things because I want to do them. And I think that allows me to feel a sense of I can have peace with myself. Another story that came up, I'm not sure why, but I used to work on a fishing boat as a deckhand in San Diego. And I remember that one time we were out at sea and we were pulling in the nets. And the hydraulics got messed up because the deckhand didn't do it right. And my captain was so upset from not catching any fish at sea that he took his cigarette and he burned it on the guy's neck. And the guy turned around and punched my captain in the face, which he promptly returned by throwing him off of the boat. So I'm at this point where I am like 18 years old, watching this man who can't swim, who works on a fishing boat, in the water. And I have to kind of get down in the dinghy, row out, and pull him back on, and everything's fine. So it's not like it's a dangerous situation. But now I'm on a boat with two people that don't want to talk with each other for, like, days. And, I think a lot of my life has been being the peacemaker for people sometimes. So trying to get them to talk, nothing really works. Silence for, like, 2 days. I have a terrible time with silence. I don't like silence, as you can tell. So eventually, though, I realized it was totally out of my control. My captain slammed down a Stella Artois right in front of the deckhand, and he was just like, man, it happens. Something to that effect. Maybe a little bit more sailor talk than that. And the guy was like, man, it happens. And then they were fine, and I was like, I kept saying, like, that's not real peace because you guys didn't talk about it and you didn't say, like, what you did wrong and make it kind of an allocution and, like an amends. But maybe that was enough for them, So I guess there's a diversity in peacemaking that I think that sometimes peacemaking can be just so simple as I slam down a beer in front of you and that's enough for you. I think some people are like that, and I don't think it's any better or worse. And honestly, it was just a hilarious story to me at the time, but I think that should be honored as well in peacemaking. So I just wanted to say that.
So you're saying that that's not better or worse than people who kind of need to work it out a little bit more?
I suppose I don't understand the mindset of not needing to work it out more. Like, that would never work for me. You know, I ask why too much. You know, my third grade teacher would be chalking me up, but at the same time, like, I'm not in charge of their feelings, I guess. Do I think it's probably more emotionally healthy? Yes. But emotional health is like a timing thing, I think. You know, like, sometimes you have to be as emotionally healthy as you can be. You know, so I think that varies for people, you know, and like, you know, how much can you handle? Do you really want to go through a full apology and like, what is the root of the issue? Or do you just want to move on and say, that's good enough? Like, does something have to be holistically peaceful to be peace? No. Like, that's why I say I've made peace with myself, but does that mean I'm at peace with myself all day? Definitely not. So like, I see you playing devil's advocate, Michael, because part of me doesn't believe myself. Absolutely. But I think there's a part of me that's like, I need to learn to believe myself. And that's the same way as how I write things down on the mirror. I need to learn to believe that because I think it's true, but I don't understand. You know what I mean? What do you think?
Well, I mean, my devil's advocacy was more like, sometimes I feel like that's, and to be fair, I'm not like that at all either. I would need to understand it to its depths. But sometimes I feel like the ability to kind of just be like, it's as simple as that, is really, really positive. I feel like I don't know. I can't speak for them because I don't know where they were, but I do wonder whether you think part of that was because they had such reason to get along. Like, if they have like this small world that they are literally functioning together, do they have to make peace in a kind of functional way?
Very true. That's a great point, I think. Because sometimes I wonder, like, how do we make peace? Again, I'm getting very systemic very quickly, but how do we make peace as a nation? Well, we're all struggling together. We're all on the same boat. I'm sorry I did it. But, like, we're in this boat and we're trapped. Like, we're at sea. And eventually someone's got to talk to each other or throw down a beer or just say, like, I'm not talking to you. But, like, what are we doing? If it's just to say, like, I respect your opinion, but we have the same values, I'm good enough with that, you know? So I guess I feel like a very sensitive person. So when I see anger around me, it deeply saddens me. And when I see sadness around me, it makes me deeply angry. That it's not like hopeless that I can't change it, but I guess I look at it as like, how do I use the tools that I have to do something good?
Right. I would argue that on that national boat we're on, or global boat we're on, or whatever, I feel like we don't know that we're on the boat yet. In a lot of cases, like, there is no reason to make up. I don't need to make up with you to move on with my life. Like, the boat is bigger. I don't need to interact with you. Just unfriend me. That's fine.
Yeah. So in a way, we need to shrink the galley or something like that to create some kind of like conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. Part of me agrees, but part of me wonders, worries that it's not that simple, that like proximity wouldn't necessarily create peace. Like at first, these two sailor men were proximal to each other, and one threw the other off of the boat, and then you had to go and get him. And so I don't know. I think on the one hand, I think that it helps to recognize that we are like in this together, but I do think that like, you know, when we get close to each other, we do sometimes devour each other. The thing that I got from the story, what you've been talking about, is very like true as well. The thing I got from the story that was interesting was not that they were able to reconcile because of physical proximity, although I think that was a large part of it, but that there was something that happened between the two of them that like distinctly did not happen between like them and you. You were outside of this, especially you being like an 18-year-old who, you know, had not lived in this world that they had lived in. Like, I think when you were talking about, you know, your way of resolving issues, which is like you talk about these things and you come to like, you express why you were hurt and like you express like what you needed from the person at that time and whatever. And then talking about your teacher who like just didn't understand you and why you're always asking why. I think in this very similar way, there was something the two sailors on the boat, that they deeply understood about each other. Like, there was a communication that happened, like, when he put down the Stella Artois, he was saying something to the effect of, like, I understand how I hurt you. This is how I'm going to, like, respond to that. And then when he said, like, hey, it happens, there was, like, a whole communication, in those words, which I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking that, like, maybe the thing is that we have to understand each other, and we have to take the time to understand each other. And it's interesting to me to think that maybe the two of them just understood each other in a way that you didn't. And so you were, like, in this outside party, and you were like, peace could not have been made here. But in reality, there was a lot that went on because of the, like, mutual, like, understanding, which I think comes from the proximity, and it comes from them working together for a really long time and stuff. So I think the proximity matters. I just, like, also just found it really interesting to think about the just the different communication styles, like you were saying, the diversity in peacemaking, that, like, you don't have to understand the way that they communicate with each other to, like, get to peace, and it could still be, valuable. Just interesting to me.
Yeah. The idea of proximity, I like that you're broadening it from a literal sense. I don't mean it in a totally literal sense, and I don't think we all do. But, like, I mean it in a sense of, is there some value that we can connect on, like, underneath everything, that gives us a springboard just to start a conversation that allows for, like, mutual respect. And again, like, I don't think that everyone needs to talk to each other, but at the same time, I think more dialogue could happen. And I guess it saddens me. And that proximity I'd like to see happen. And I think that proximity comes from, like, disregarding the opinions that people have sometimes, but just seeing their values. Like, do you love human beings? Do you have kindness? Like, the other day, I was, like, literally sitting at a table in the middle of a Republican and a Democrat, and they were saying the same thing to each other, and the same value with a different opinion. And I always feel like I'm sitting in the middle of the table, you know what I'm saying? And that doesn't help people to be at peace, but it's not about me. It's the fact that is so much division. You know what I'm saying? Like, that proximity has been made into two proximal zones, it seems, more and more. I just started having social media about 4 months ago, and I see how that can happen. Like, you follow something, and it gets extreme. I mean, this is old news to people, but as a 29-year-old man, it feels very strange to see social media for the first time. And people often think I'm very strange. Like, why are you replying with this long block of text? Like, no one is reading this. And I'm like, well, you asked me a question, though. Like, I have to answer you, right? I don't know.
Given the conversation that we've had so far, what would you say is one principle of peacemaking that we can take from this episode?
Is it okay if I ask you guys first? Because I feel like I've talked so much. Like, I feel like I've monopolized so much time that, like, to answer that question would be talking a lot about, like, my own stories.
That's just so on brand. I would even say that question is kind of emblematic of the theme of peace that I see, that's been, like, stringing throughout, which is with the teacher with the ADHD. There was, you said that she was a great teacher and that she cared about you. And also she was doing something that she didn't think was harmful, but it was, because there was this kind of meta communication that you were other, and, like, that communicated something. And then we have the boat story where, like, they were speaking a different language than you were. You didn't see peace being made. You were like, how could that happen? But they were potentially speaking another language where they were saying a lot that was not said, and they both understood that. Same with the Republican and Democrats. You were saying, you were hearing them on a different level than they might be hearing each other. I mean, maybe they were super open-minded, Republicans and Democrats, but, like, you were ready to hear them on a level that was not solely the content that they were saying. And I would say throughout this, like, how do you want us to introduce you? What's your first impression of me? Like, and then, here's what I'm thinking. Also, Obasi, I really appreciate that thing that you're doing. And, throughout, you've been, like, you have attended to the process of what we're talking about beyond the content of what we're talking about. And I feel like that is also a theme in each of your stories. So I would posit that one of the principles of peacemaking would be attending to the process above and beyond the content.
That's really well said. I think that links the three stories is like this process of taking things apart, being an outsider. I studied anthropology for some time, and what you said really reminded me of this idea of like estrangement can create intimacy, and intimacy can create estrangement in some ways. I think that a lot of psychologists, anthropologists, sociologists, anybody in those fields often feel like an outsider, and you're observing humans like, wow, what a species. That's interesting that you guys do that. And I think that estrangement provides an intimacy. Like, it provides a love of humans, like a kairos in me. And I think that allows me to kind of think about, okay, well, you didn't end up where I am, but at least, like, you got there in a beautiful way. I'm hard-pressed to find a person that I'm like, you're not a beautiful person. Like, I really do mean that. And if I wasn't so honest, I wouldn't say it because it would sound like baloney, dude. But, like, really, people are beautiful, dude. The struggle of being a human being, you gotta wake up in the morning, get your feet out of bed when it's cold, fix your hygiene if you want, and then you gotta go do all these things. You gotta feed yourself. You gotta get all these things done. You gotta make sure that you're loving other people so that you can love yourself. You gotta do all these things, and that's not easy, and you don't have to do that, but like that's a tall order that I feel like can be asked of someone. And if you're not meeting that order, maybe that's peace to be like, not yet. That's cool. That's the process, dude. I'm going to make it. Like, I will make it there. Because my values are right. Like, I think human beings' values astound me in a good way. Most of the time. 99.9% of the time, it kills germs on contact. So, Michael, like, your comment struck me in the heart, for sure. I do like to look at the process of what people do. More than what they say.
I like that a lot. I like the way that you see the world. I think that I also have not met a person that I don't think is a beautiful human, and I also think that that's an absurd thing to say. But I also, I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday, that it is very Dostoevskian of me, but I believe that it is almost always the right thing to do to express an emotion that is eating away at your insides, and that emotion is usually love in some way. And I think that that's being, human in the ways that you've just described. And that's what is beautiful about being human is the thing that propels us. And that's the thing that bubbles over when you express your passion, which I think is really cool. The thing that stuck with me, the thing that you said was the diversity of peacemaking, this is all very, very much connected to all the things that you both said. But what I think came out to me as the thing that feels almost too obvious, too simple to be the principle of peacemaking, but that peacemaking requires that we understand each other, or that we seek to understand each other. Because that's what I'm actually really getting out of this conversation, is that from the very beginning, from your first conversation about yourself, making peace with yourself, it was this kind of struggle to understand yourself, and then once you were able to understand yourself, you were able to start talking to yourself, and to talk to yourself in ways that were made peace. And that your teacher, on the other hand, was a great person, but she couldn't make peace with you, and she couldn't help you to make peace with yourself, even just because she couldn't understand you. And then there's the conversation in the boat, and the understanding and the conversation. So all of this has been to me about it's not even seeking to understand, I guess. It's understanding, which we do have to seek to understand often, but not always, because I think the fishermen didn't necessarily seek to understand each other. It was the proximity that made it happen over time. And I think that sometimes we seek to understand and we fail. So it's not that I don't think seeking to understand is the right thing to do. It's that I'm kind of separating those concepts, that seeking is important, but simply the understanding is what's required. So I just found that really interesting.
No, I love that. And maybe understanding is just the fact that we're still in the same galley. We haven't walked away from the table yet.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I hope.
I think that's it, Michael. Do you have anything else?
No.
Do I not have my plug? Do I not get a plug for my new HBO special? Yeah, there's an HBO special about me. My name lines with Larry Schmavid, and it's coming out. I don't know. I got nothing to say.
Tell me what's a life? I've been feeling starstruck, seeing human love thrive in this really long dusk. Guess it's really all love, 7 billion of us, and I read the headlines. Tell me what's a life? It's potlucks of violence, corn shucked to conscience, hot sauce, blood diamonds. Everybody pitching in forks red with silence. We already ate up that cornbread of kindness. Or it's something in between. We got stories in our stories, knowing stories what it seems. As we stumble, as we fall, we watch each other and we scream. If our weakness is our glory, it's more glory to be seen.
This has been the Peacemakers podcast, produced and hosted by me, Obasi Shah, and my co-host, Michael O'Brien. The intro and outro song, What's a Life, is by me and produced by Eerie Skies. The interludes are produced by Gabe Gladstein of the pop duo Running On Everything. If you liked this episode and want to reflect more, come visit our website at principlesofpeacemaking.org, where you can find more of our content and information on how to support us. Our guest today was Adam Ede. Thanks, Adam. And thank you for listening. Now go and make peace.